Hello. Oh, hello.
Hello, everybody. So, I have I got an official thing of questions and everything, and I know this is kind of sort of an official thing, but like Leigh is the homie, so we thought we were just gonna make this just like a regular conversation. We haven't had any time to like catch up.
No, we haven't seen each other since before the dark times.
Yeah, but the before time.
The before times. And for those of you, do y'all know who Tochi is?
Stop it.
Yes. No, because he's one of the best SFNF writers working, and the person who take the compliments. Because when people look back at this time and they're like, who are the seminal writers? That he's one of them. So check out Goliath, check out War Girls, check out Riot Baby. Like, such an incredible author. And so prolific, it makes me mad.
You wildin', but keep going. No, I mean, Leigh needs no introduction whatsoever. Like, it's just.
But please do. No.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I was walking the show floor and there's the New York Comic Con like merch booth and everything, and they had like Grishaverse merch, and it got me thinking like this is 10 years of Grishaverse. Yeah. This is a decade. Yes, like this is like MCU time of Grishaverse. Like, if we're looking at eras, like, this is...
And yet, Robert Downey Jr. doesn't return my calls.
I mean, his loss, though. No, I mean, it seems like it's worked out, like, pretty well. Have you had the chance to, like, look back on these 10 years? Because I know you're running around doing, like, a million things. Have you had the chance to just, like, sit down and be like, yo, I did that?
I'm amazing. No, I will be completely honest and say we had this Grisha Gala in LA a few days ago that my publishers put on. It was so beautiful. And part of me was like, why are we making a fuss? Like maybe at year 50 you get to make a fuss, right? But I was part of me was like that. And then I went to this thing and then I haven't gotten to really meet and interact with readers since before the pandemic. And I think part of me forgot, this is gonna sound bad, but I kind of forgot how important books are.
I mean, hashtag relatable though, because I played a lot of God of War over the pandemic, so.
Because it is easy, we have in some ways what is sort of like a fundamentally frivolous profession, right? We are at its root, we are entertainers. And I think when you only live online, it's easy to become a little bit cynical about fandom, and then you come to a place like this and you meet readers and you see people in cosplay and you get to actually have a conversation, and it's like it all kind of rushed in on me and I got super emotional and had a little cry. But I have a cry at every occasion. So but yeah, I don't know that I've had like time to be like, oh, I'm an elder statesman now. But I definitely is sort of hitting me that like I've been really lucky because not many people get to write in the same world for this long, and I feel very grateful. So thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you. And also, thank you. Well, like, so as a craftsperson, so like I have yet to have the opportunity to like stay in the same world for more than a few years at a time, and like gratefully so, because like I couldn't do like the Attack of Titan thing where I just live in that really grim and gruesome world for like however many years, because like my worlds are not the prettiest places.
I just watched the first episode of that for the
Yo,
I was not prepared.
You are in for a treat. Anyway, before this
Weird
turns
description of that, but sure.
Before this turns into the Attack on Titan panel, but like, what has it been like, right? Because you have that first trilogy, and then you have the Six of Crows duology, and then like, there's just more and more and more. So how do you manage to like keep it fresh? And has your process changed from the very beginning to doing the duology to do, what is that?
I mean, the process is fundamentally the same, in the sense that the trick for me, I wanted to be a writer from the time I was a kid, but the trick for me was learning what my process was, and learning that I was an outliner and that I needed that structure in order to really to finish a book. I was great at starting, I was not good at finishing. So that process has stayed intact, but I think I trust it more. Like, when I feel the terrible doubt and the worry and the like, how did I do this? Like when you're at the beginning of something and you're like, what is this alchemy that changes an idea into a book? I think I trust that process a little more. And I'm not like, you know, Brandon Sanderson apparently like planned 36 books in the Cosmere when he was 17. And I'm like, same. No. Not
Hard
same.
same. Yeah.
No, I don't work that way. And if you notice, like even the trilogy, the duology, and then the next duology, they don't span a long period of time. My brain just doesn't work that way. And so this has been a learning experience through the whole thing, you know? And I think, look, you know, I think we do like to change up. We do like, and I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like every time I learn to do something, I'm like, great, now let's try something else.
Yo, that's hashtag relatable. Like, because like you know, it's a similar thing for me where I want every book to be a challenge. And in many ways, you know, certain books will be like the polar opposite of what came before.
Yes.
You know, Riot Baby, for instance, it's very tiny. It's all about constriction, claustrophobia, and then with Goliath, I wanted expanse. But also the scary thing about Goliath was like normally I'm a plotter. I'm a planner. I like to outline. I like to know where I'm going. It's like the immigrant thing of like you don't quit your job until you already have another job lined up. And so you know, it's like that. I like to know where I'm going. But Goliath was the first book that I kind of wrote as a pantser. Yeah.
That shocks me.
Yo.
That is a weighty tome, and that really shocks me.
It was terrifying. But like it was interesting because I think it gets at some of what you're speaking to with regards to process evolving and change. I'm never gonna do that again. But it was a fascinating learning experience that I don't think I would have been able to open myself up to had it not been for everything that came before.
Definitely. And I feel like, you know, I think with every book, we try to sort of be worthy of the opportunity we've been given. You know, like, I think if I were trying to sell Shadow and Bone now, it's a very different market. And, you know, it's a much more crowded and I think much more competitive market. Yeah. So, and I like to think that I'm improving with every book, but that's, you know, that's why we keep pushing ourselves. And I think too, like, it's interesting you talk about reaction because there's no question on my mind, you know, Shadow and Bone is a chosen one story. It's a very, very straight up chosen one, you know, and Six of Crows is very much not. And it is a reaction, it was a direct reaction to that of asking what happens to the people who don't have the grand destinies, who don't have royal blood, who are viewed by as expendable in the world.
Yeah, no, it's very much like, and that was one of the things that I loved and still love about the Grishaverse is that you do get this like chosen one view, and then you know you get to see what it's like in the little palace and among the sort of rarefied, but also like Six of Crows, you're living in the gutter. Like, you know, you're with the like assassins, you're with the people doing the heists. You're there with that. And so I don't know, I loved the all-encompassingness of it. But I mean, something that you said earlier about the competitiveness of the market, it reminded me of, you know, sometimes I'll like hear about what it's like to like apply to college in these days. And I'm just like, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful.
Sorry, youth.
Yeah. That like I got to do it way in the analog days when like the internet was new.
There's no way. There's no way. Like I look at him that people are like, these were my SAT scores and these are my extracurriculars and then I built a building in my spare time and I'm like,
you're like you're like a 4-time Olympian on your college application and it's like, come on.
I know. Meanwhile, we're like, we write poems. They're very sophisticated for our age. Like that. Yes, this is the curse of being a not so gifted child. So yeah.
But like, so there is a segue. But speaking of college, and I'm jumping around a little bit, but we have a little bit of a connection with regards to our college experience. Fun fact: Leigh and I both went to Yale.
Honestly, if you're still riding on that at our age,
this is literally like the you peaked in high school of it all. Yeah.
Speaking of SAT scores. No.
Well, so talk to me about Ninth House, and you have Hellbent. Like, so talk. Right?
It makes me so happy.
Well, like it was super fun for me because like I know all those places that you're talking about and referencing there.
I mean, Goliath is set in New Haven too.
That's true.
Okay, so understand this. Like, what are the chances? Like, no one cares about New Haven, and we were both like, you know where we should set a weird book. Yeah.
This is the beginning of the New Haven subgenre. Like, there's going to be, just watch, between me and Leigh, there's going to be a whole New Haven novel subgenre.
Yes, that would be amazing.
It's been in the works for some time now.
I love the idea of like it's like the Algonquin Round Table, but it's New Haven. Like we're all just gathered around at Atticus, like eating black bean soup and just like literature.
No, you got to get the coffee. Yeah, you got to have the coffee cake from Claire's. Like you got to have the Claire's coffee cake.
It's weird that they serve
right. Who's Claire? Yes. You know the vibes. You know the vibes. But so talk to me about the experience of putting Ninth House together and where like that inspiration came from, because I know there was a walk along Grove Street that played a part.
Yeah, I mean, this is so when I went to school. I'm from Los Angeles. I grew up in the Valley, and we used to send letters back in the olden times, and so I had gone to walk to the post office, and I was walking back and I was reading a letter. And I look up from the letter, and on my left, there's a giant mausoleum. And when I say giant, I mean the size of an apartment building that is surrounded by a wrought iron fence with snakes on it. And on my right, there are the gates to the New Haven's, the Grove Street Cemetery with the words, "The dead shall be raised," across them. And I'm like, this is the best place I've ever been. Like, understand, as a young goth, this was like,
yes.
Finally, I'm not at the mall anymore. I've come home. So that was the spark. But I really, that was literally probably 20 years before I started writing Ninth House. And that book was a beast because I had never written in our world before. It required a huge amount of research, and it ended up being a very different book than I initially thought it was going to be. And this happens with all of my books. Like, I always say, like, I'm the Michael Bay of YA because I'm like, I'm just going to blow shit up.
I love it.
It's going to be amazing.
I love it.
But, like, I always start out, like with Six of Crows, I start out being like, I'm going to write a romp. It's going to be this fun heist story. And then somewhere in there... ... Kaz is riding his brother's bloated corpse to glory, so, like, you're
As
so
has
welcome.
been known to happen.
Yes, but, like, I think when you actually start to excavate things, like, I'm going to write a fun story about the occult, and what if the magic of the secret societies were real, you can't write about a city full of thugs and thieves without asking what made them criminals, okay? What forces caused this underworld to grow? And why are people then having to operate within it? What does it mean if a culture is entirely driven by profit? Like, what are and so you end up telling a different story because not because you have some grand message to tell, but because you're trying to tell the story honestly. And when you're writing about New Haven, like, you can't just write about Yale. You have to write about New Haven too. And you can't write about being an undergraduate, or I guess a graduate at an elite university without talking about race and class and gender. So it's, I think I always set out with a popcorn movie in my head, and then somewhere we get to a really tragic indie drama, and then we meet somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
No, I can do, big Steven Soderbergh vibes. Yeah. Yes. Well, like, and that was another thing that, like, I was really interested in about Ninth House was town gown relations. Like, because that's such a real thing. And, like, with Goliath, it's more town than gown, because the gown just, like, went and screwed off to space.
As we do.
As we do. But, like, I don't know. I really appreciated that. Because, like, it'd be very easy to get caught up in the mystique of the societies and everything, and I'm not going to ask whether or not you were in one.
I was.
There you go. that was the setup. But, like, it'd be very easy to, like, make that the entire world of the book. And one thing that I appreciate about just everything that you write is that you delve into the societal implications of why people are where they are. And so, I don't know, I just really love that.
Thank you. And what was funny was, when I went to research Yale, that's what I thought I was researching, but instead I fell in love with New Haven. And I felt actually a lot of embarrassment over the fact that I was very much one of those college students who didn't really understand the town that I lived in. And I had lunch with one of my roommates who had chosen to stay there. She works in the public schools. And I was like, why did you? You know, what? And she was like, because we owe this town. And I was like, oh, Leslie, you are a better human being than I am. Like, okay. And that was really with me through the entire writing of the book.
Wow. So what can you tell us so far about Hellbent?
First, I feel the need to give the disclaimer that these are not YA books.
Yes,
They have mature themes, so proceed with caution. Hellbent is bonkers. It is very long. It is very weird. You will see characters as you've never seen them before.
We'd love to see it.
There is some nudity.
Parental discretion
There is
is
some
advised.
nudity, there is some foul language, and there is a hell heist, so, you know.
Oh my goodness. These are a few of my favorite things. So one thing that I've just been dying to ask you about, because I've gotten glimpses of it from your Insta stories. Yo, the Shadow and Bone adaptation. Yo. Just like, especially because like I've seen instances where like, you know, the source material hasn't been respected or they just like decided to do, but you've been very involved in the process, right? So what is that like? Was that a conscious decision, and what has that process been like? Because you get the EP credit, like your name is in the credits.
I mean, I'm sure they would like me to spend less time being involved. So when we started out, I met with Eric Heiserer, and to his credit, he was like, I want to meet her first. And he actually was a Six of Crows fan.
Oh, yeah.
Good taste, yes. But I knew this because he had tweeted a picture on his way to the Academy Awards, if you will, where he had the book on his lap, and he's like, this book is great. And my friends were like, oh my God, you know, and I was like, okay. And so we said to Netflix, like, you know, he's a fan. Like, it's a long shot, but why don't we try? And he and I sat down, and we started talking about the changes we wanted to make, about bringing the stories together, about shifts we wanted to make in casting, and we were very much on the same page. And so, you know, in Hollywood, I like to say the handshake is actually like, they just wait to stab you in the back.
Oh, yeah.
So it can be very scary because with the Grishaverse, I was handing over 10 years of my life. I was handing over a huge body of work, the bulk of my career, and that's very frightening. And the truth is, it is always a gamble, but in this case, I gambled well. My gut served me well. He not only respects the books, he respects the readers. He respects the fans. Like, a lot of people out there have a lot of contempt for fantasy readers, genre readers, YA readers. He's not one of them. And that, I think, is super rare. So, and we had just had this incredible writer's room. So I would go in every week or every other week. They would pitch me the outlines for the show, which was fun, because you're hearing your story told back to you, but then you also get to be surprised because it was so different. Occasionally I would flag things and be like, that actually kind of breaks the world. Like, you can't have a tracking device. That's weird. Tracker, yes. Tracking device, no. So
They just got repeating rifles.
That's right. You know, or we would talk, or I remember there's a thing that happens with Bagra and Mal in one of the episodes, and I was like, oh, yes! Like, I was so excited. So that was really, like, that was sort of a fantastic process because they were able to ask me questions and we were able to really engage with it, and I could flag things that worried me and also sort of celebrate things that I was super excited about. And then when we went into production, it meant reading scripts, draft after draft after draft, because when you're writing a book, it's just you and the editor, okay? But when you're working on a TV show, everybody has notes. Everybody has notes, everybody has opinions, and I was like, if I had to write a book this way, I would lose my mind.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Shout out to screenwriters. I don't know how you do it. And then, you know, and then we were working on that, and then watching dailies, and then watching rough cuts. So by the time season 1 had aired, I had, and then I reached a point where I was like, okay, I'm dropping out now because I actually want to be a little bit surprised, and because there's nothing else I can do. Like, you have to take your hands off the wheel and stop stressing over the details. And I was very lucky. I had a very good experience. I have had friends who have had terrible experiences in adaptation. I've talked to a lot of young writers who are now, or newer writers who are trying to make adaptation deals, and they will frequently say, how do I get to have the good experience? And unfortunately, it is a roll of the dice. I would like to tell you it's because I'm just so brilliant, but that's not in this case.
You're not going to say which gods you made the blood sacrifice to.
No.
That's
First
under
you
the
draw
you got to
chalk
sign
pentagram.
You got to sign the NDA first before you can get that.
That's
info.
exactly right. But I will say too, with season 2, I did take a huge step back because I was behind. Like, I am so grateful that you guys are excited about Hellbent because this is the longest I've taken between books. And I was like, I could not balance. I know some people can, and I have so much respect for them, but I can't balance that, like, the TV thing and the book thing, and books, like, this is my dream job, is to write books, you know? So I was like, I am letting the wrong thing slip. So I was like, I'm taking a step back. I'm gonna trust you guys. And from everything I've seen, I was wise. It was a good choice.
Oh, it's so. I mean, like I have such like admiration and whatnot as like a fellow writer, but also as somebody who gets to experience this media and this like entertainment and these stories. Like I could not be more grateful. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. That's very kind.
So one thing I wanted to ask, and this is sort of backtracking a little bit, but about the Grishaverse and about process, one of the things that I found like very interesting about it was the sort of Russian, Central Asian, like casting of the world. And so talk to me a little bit about that, like where that came from, and yeah.
I mean, my family is Russian and Lithuanian on one side, but we're Jewish. And so we have a very... Okay. Unexpected. Thank you, my tribe. But that means that we have a different relationship to pretty much every culture we're a part of, right? Because we're not quite a part of it. And it's the nature of diaspora. And I grew up in a house where Russia was... It was both a magical, beautiful place. It was a place you could never return to, right? It's Krypton, it's gone. Like,
yeah.
Like, it is gone. And, but at the same time, it was a place of terrible oppression and fear. And so I think it was deeply wedged in my consciousness that this was the right touchstone for a world that I wanted to create with this vast discrepancy in wealth and power, with a conscripted army, with a nation that had failed to industrialize. And so for me, that was it just felt organically like the right fit. And similarly, when I started to build Ketterdam, I had read this one statistic about how when the East India Company would send ships out, only 1 in 3 would return. Now, in Six of Crows, I say 1 in 5 because 1 in 3 is so implausible that you're just like, the human cost means nothing. Like, not surprised, but like, given some of the shit the Dutch pulled, sorry. But like, that is, like, it's hit me so hard, and I was like, okay, I want to build this culture that is in sort of like the Protestant work ethic, but like juiced to 11. And so it sort of depends which sort of the nature of the country actually indicates to me kind of how, like, where I want to take my jumping off point from.
Oh, I love that. I don't know. I just, like, as somebody who does like a lot of research for his books and everything, I'm just like buzzing right now. So, but like, so that's amazing. So like, I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the newest entry in the Grishaverse, Demon in the Wood. I brought my own personal copy so I could get you to sign it afterwards.
If I must.
Yeah. But so we've talked about, telling the Grishaverse story in different media. What was it like jumping into the medium of graphic novel for this story?
I mean, I loved it because to me it's the perfect balance between collaboration and not having all those people getting notes. Because so Danny Pendergast did the art. She and I are doing an event tonight. She's extraordinary, and she found moments in this story to make so emotional. Like, I always call it insert knife and twist.
Yo, there's so many insert knife and twist moments in this.
Like, oh, you stabbed me, but it gets worse. Like, so that's how I write. So, but she found those moments, like, where I was like, there are a couple of scenes toward the end where she just took my breath away with the way she set up the pages. And we got to chat recently, and she was like, there's a scene with a girl with a rock. And we both were like, this was the moment for us where we just felt like the whole story converged. But yeah, like we got to be the directors, the director of photography, the people who do production design, the costume designer, the casting. Like we got to do all of that, but we also got to be in collaboration. And writing is usually like a very lonely thing. Like you're on your own. If you get stuck, you're stuck.
Yeah, it's your fault. Like
You have to call your friends and be like, hello, please help me. And so one of the things I love most is the feeling of being in collaboration with another artistic person. And it just, to me, it was a perfect balance. I loved it.
No, it came out beautifully.
And that's all her. It's all her. I'd love to take credit. I cannot.
I mean, well, like, so a little bit about Demon in the Wood. Who is the story about?
This is the Darkling's prequel story. I guess you could say it's his villain origin story. Although some people do not consider him a villain. He is definitely the most controversial character I've ever written. And the subject of much debate.
He's just so pretty.
I know. I know. You did a little murder, but you're so cute.
Oh, you're so cute!
I think so I wrote the short story this is based on way back when Runen Rising was about to come out. And I think I have a real push-pull relationship with this character because when people defend him, I'm like, you shut your mouth, he's a monster. And when people are like, he's a monster, I'm like, you shut your mouth, he's a small baby who needs protection. So, the worse he got in the books, the more I wanted to show where this began. And I think, too, as the worse he got on the show, I was like, perhaps a tonic for this. In part because I think the thing that I find compelling about him and that I think makes him controversial is he started with very noble goals. Yeah. And his goal is never wrong, right? Like the idea of providing a safe place for his people is a just one. It's a righteous one. But he loses track of those people over hundreds of years of persecution and loss and violence. So I wanted to provide a balance to some of the more horrific things he does, but also I think I'm always going to be one of those people who are like, cool motive, still murder.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, so many of my favorite characters come from exactly that, like, Venn diagram of, like, persecuted demographic, but, like, super powerful and can murder everybody. Type of, like, that's just, I dig that.
And look, there's always going to be, I think the reason we find characters like the Darkling and Kaz and Alex Stern compelling is because they do things that we don't do. Like, they don't have boundaries. Like, they don't have that moral compass that's always pointing to the right or wrong thing. And I find those characters so exciting to write.
Yeah. Oh, like, it's just, it's so meaty. Like, there's just... It's just, like, I don't know. I love...
I would like that blurb to be on there. Cute and meaty.
Cute and meaty.
Cute and meaty. Demon in the Wood.
Because, like, that was exactly where I was operating from with Riot Baby. I was like, okay, what if God was a black woman, And, like, that, so, like, I think that's one of the reasons why we vibe the way that we do is because we're, like, that right there. Persecuted person, but, like, super powerful.
Tremendous power. Yeah. Qualms. Some qualms.
Some qualms.
Some concerns, but also not as many qualms.
Exactly, because, we want the struggle to, like, we don't want you to get to your decision. We don't want you to become Magneto immediately. Like, we got a couple 100 pages before that happens. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So, like, I know you're very busy, like, tremendously busy. What are you consuming now to, like, refill the well?
Okay, I just read Elia Don Johnson's new YA book, and I am blanking on the title, but just look her up. She is one of my favorite writers. She, talk about somebody who, like, just changes with she wrote this incredible vampire series called Moonshine that, like, nobody has read, and it is so good. And her new YA is about basically, like, a woman who's sent it's like a Scheherazade story if Scheherazade was talking to a murder god. And it's so good. Like, I always know a book is great when I start reading it. I'm like, damn it.
Yeah.
Damn it. Like, why didn't I do this? But incredible. And then I don't know what I've been watching. We watch a lot of Bob's Burgers. It's my comfort show.
Yep.
Like, it's very much my comfort. And this is true whenever I'm writing something dark. Like, the reason there are waffles all over Ketterdam is because I was watching Parks and Rec while I was writing Six of Crows, because I'd be like, sadness, darkness, death, and I'd be like, oh, that's so nice. Like, I need a balance.
Yes.
I can't be watching something super dark.
No, definitely. I'm the same way. There was a period of time where I was watching episodes of The Wire before sleep, and I would wake up in the morning and I'd be like, why am I in the worst mood ever? And then I switched over to Arrested Development, and I was like, oh man, sunshine and rainbows.
Wow, I can't tell you how much that would not work for me. Because I watch Arrested Development, I'm like, I want to murder everyone. Same as Seinfeld. I hate
Oh my
that
goodness, yeah, no.
I'm getting my Jew card pulled because I am like the one Jewish person who's like, I know those people. I have to go to Thanksgiving with them. I don't want to watch them on my television screen.
What's the deal with Seinfeld?
Oh my God, shut up. It's so bad.
I will say the Bob's Burgers thing, it reminded me, this is a complete tangent and has nothing to do with anything, but like, so one of my favorite shows was particularly the early seasons of Archer. And the season 4 premiere, and also one of my favorite movies is this little indie movie called A History of Violence, starring Viggo Mortensen.
Yep.
Yeah, like it's amazing.
Okay.
Ed Harris is in it. Yeah. Okay.
So like one of my favorite tropes is like mild-mannered person secretly a badass.
Secretly a badass.
Not
yes.
just a badass, but secretly a murder machine.
Yes.
So like that John Wick sensibility is deep in my heart, and I don't think I realized that until I was like, so I saw that movie and I was like, oh, that's one of the. And I like to find this. Are there writers in the audience? Yes. Okay. So one of my tricks, I talked about this with Marie Lou, like, is finding the things that like when you watch a bad movie and you know it's bad, but you're still enjoying it.
Yeah.
Is locking into what is in this bad thing that's making me love it, and then putting that in your work, because it becomes a way that it like drives the pleasure of writing.
Yep.
I think.
No, absolutely. So the season 4 premiere of Archer.
This is your home, Tochi.
Yo, so Archer somehow like loses his memory between the end of season 3 and the start of season 4, and his new life is as a guy flipping burgers at a burger restaurant. And if you don't already know, the guy who voices Bob from Bob's Burgers and the guy who voices Sterling Archer are the same guy.
That is a deep cut, what you just did.
Bam!
Yeah.
H. John Benjamin. Okay, so Sterling Archer, super spy extraordinaire, is flipping burgers, and then all of a sudden these like enemy dudes from the spy world come in. And it's literally like frame for frame, the exact scene from A History of Violence when the gangsters come at Viggo Mortensen and he like smashes the coffee pot against one of their faces and like burns the other guy's face on the griddle and does like all this stuff. And he literally has no idea who he is. And it's just, I was just like, yo, these are like all of my favorite things at the same time.
There's a movie, I'm trying to remember, it's called Nobody.
Yeah.
And it's by the same...
that's the Better Call Saul. Yeah.
Yeah, and it gets, I'm sorry, we're just like, yeah, let me tell you what else I watched. But it's another one of those, like, I'm a mild-mannered guy. I'm being kicked around by the world. And I really want to write, like, a lady version of that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm shy and retiring, you know. I'm a research librarian, but I will kill you with my thumbs. Like, that would be very exciting to me.
No,
Is that Camilla? Yes. Camilla was the woman who helped me. She helped me so much on the Hellbent research for reasons that will become apparent when you read the book. But like, yes, that is, I'm going to write you a book where where you do murder and deal with antiquities. It will be great.
So I know, like, it'd be very easy for me to monopolize Leigh's time, but I am aware that there are plenty of people who came to see her and talk with her and ask her questions. And so we have microphones lined up.
I don't see microphones.
I see one,
there's one
there.
There's one there.
And there's one. Good eye.
Does anybody have a question?
So,
Go to the microphone.
yes,
Immediately.
feel free.
Push, shove, trample anybody you want to. No, please don't do that. I don't want to be sued.
Just throw 0 elbows. But before we get to the questions, I just wanted to say that after this event at 1:30 p.m. at autographing table number 1, Leigh will be doing a ticketed signing. So if you have a ticket, feel free to get over there and fan person out and get your stuff signed. And because I'm special, I'll be getting my thing signed before that. That's literally why I write books, is so that I can get on this stage and get them signed.
That is a really bad long con there, don't you? That is.
This is the long con.
I wrote a 500-page novel.
So I can get on stage with Leigh. And then if for whatever reason you were intrigued or amused by anything that I said, I will be doing a signing at the Tor.com booth 3027 on the show floor. It'll be from 4 to 5 p.m., so hopefully it won't be too chaotic.
And his books are available for sale there.
Yes, and my books are available for sale there. Fun fact. So I guess we can, with all that said, we can move on to questions.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. So my question is, with the Shadow and Bone TV show also having Six of Crows happening at the same time, is the plot of Six of Crows going to be happening in season 2, or is that being scrapped to have the crows being a part of the general Shadow and Bone thing?
Okay, so I can't get into specifics, but what I can tell you is they have pulled from the books extensively in season 2. So you're gonna get some of the scenes you want fed back to you in a little bit of a different way. So yes and no is what I would say. I'm sorry, I can't say more, but yes, you are gonna get some of the, some of my favorite scenes from the duology in season 2.
Perfect, thank you.
I'm waiting for Netflix to descend upon me. No one tweet anything.
There's a sniper waiting somebody somewhere.
Yes.
Oh, I'm a really big fan. I'm really excited to be here. I wanted to ask, because I'm a poli-sci major, and I'm interested in the politics. So when you brought it up, I was like, oh my God, this is me. I'm panicking, this is politics. So what was your favorite part of creating the politics of the wars between Ravka and all the other countries?
I mean, for me, the big battles are the worst part. I can tell you that much, because I'm oh, this is tiresome. There's so many people that I have to move around. But for me, the relationship between magic and military technology and the way that shifts and drives politics was always at the crux of this. Because one of the fundamental questions I asked myself when I started writing Shadow and Bone was, what happens when you bring a gun to a magic fight? And, obviously, if the magic is unlimited, not much happens. You're I have a gun. You're I have a dragon. So that's the end of that. You guys know what I mean. But for me, that tension was something that really excited me, and that I think is sort of fundamental. It created a different kind of arms race and tension within Ravka. We've had this hammer, and now that hammer is not doing what it's supposed to do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm sorry, I'm so nervous. You're my favorite author ever. Your book, Shadow and Bone, inspired me to become a writer, and your books actually got me into reading, which is why I'm such a fanatic.
Yay!
My question is, what was the reason that you started writing, and what inspired you to truly write Shadow and Bone?
First of all, I'm so excited you're writing. Please put me in your acknowledgments.
I will.
I wrote from the time I was a kid. I was an only child, and I did a lot of walking around talking to myself, which I still do. But I just put my earbuds in, cloak my weirdness. I think for me, when it really sunk in was when I hit junior high. I was a super awkward kid, surprise. And we had moved. My mom had remarried. I was at a new school. And things were just very rough. They were rough at home, they were rough at school, and that's kind of all there was, right? School, home, mall. And I walked into the library one day, and there was a table full of books that some wonderful librarian had put out that said Discover New Worlds. And it was sci-fi and fantasy classics. And I fell in love, and I never looked back. And for me, writing became a survival mechanism. It was how I dealt with my world, was by imagining a different one. So yeah, books are magic. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
First of all, I just wanted to shout out my friend Maddie, who got me into your books in the first place and is the reason I'm here. Your books are incredible. And the way she pitched Six of Crows to me was a found family heist. And that's I feel that kind of sums the whole thing up. And I feel like they're one of the most incredibly written found families. So how did you choose the dynamics of those 6 different characters? Because, you know, you put them together and some things clash and some things don't. And I just feel like that's such a hard thing to write, to get those dynamics right.
Well, thank you. I'm glad it worked. You know, this is sort of the story of my life, actually. Like I said, I had, you know, I wouldn't call it a rough upbringing, but like there were tensions. I ran away from home a couple times. Like, don't do that, kids. Or do. Be gay, do crime. I think for me, like that dynamic has always been compelling. And if you read the trilogy, you realize that by Ruin and Rising, that's what's emerging. And so I had a better understanding of that. But part of it was figuring out who are the people that would be the most, how to create the most tension with the most stakes, right? So I had always wanted to write a story about a witch hunter and a Grisha having to work together to survive. Well, how about we have them work together on a heist where they have completely different motives? You have, you know, Kaz and Inej are 2 of probably the most powerful characters I've written, but also the most fragile characters I've written. And so it was finding that tension and then finding the connections. Like, you know, I remember very specifically writing, there's a scene with Jesper and Inej on the boat when they're headed to the ice court, where they're talking about Kaz. And it was important to me that everybody had their own relationship within this, you know, that it wasn't just the couples, that everybody, like Kaz and Wyland, like, you know, like by the time we get to Crooked Kingdom, like Kaz is like Wyland's dad, like the good dad. Which is hilarious when you think about who Kaz is. Like, what a father figure, but like, you know, those things, you know, it can't, you know, I think that platonic is such a weird word for friendship, right? Like, and I don't love it because I think it speaks to a kind of passionless quality, whereas I think friendship is like the driving force in the majority of our lives. Like, romance is great, I love romance, but like that tension, that power that arises when you find your people, when you find your army, the people who are gonna have your back no matter what, is just so powerful, and that's what I was hoping to write to.
Well, you succeeded. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, hello.
Hello. First, thank you. Representation for the only child, young writers. I love to see that. I also am that. So I'm somebody who has 1 foot in the writing world and 1 foot in the filmmaking world, and very interested in interesting page-to-screen adaptations such as Shadow and Bone. And as a writer who has been able to see your literary world be so well adapted onto the screen, I'm wondering what kind of advice you would give to a younger writer / filmmaker who also has that goal as kind of like a career ambition.
In terms of like getting your work adapted, or in terms of like how to manage the adaptation should it come to be?
I suppose both.
Okay, number 1, have a villain. No, really, it is a story without an antagonist is very hard to adapt, and Hollywood has to be handheld sometimes, so yeah. I would say the most important thing, the thing I always tell people is if you can get it in the contract, don't let them change the title, okay? I couldn't, I was lucky, they decided to keep Shadow and Bone, but here's the reality. We don't make our money by being executive producers and so forth, and I love money. Money is great.
It's fantastic.
Money is fantastic. Money helps us do a lot of things. So, like, we make our money from book sales, and the fact is that is a big part of it. But what I also say is choose your partners wisely. Like, if you have 1 foot in the film world, I hope that you are building a kind of army, a kind of group of people who don't all do the same thing that you do, but who you trust, whose taste you trust, and whose work you respect, so that when you get that opportunity, you can do everything you can to pull those people in. I think we always sort of have to be on the watch for people who for whatever reason may have fallen through the cracks of attention that the entertainment world and the publishing world likes to spread very thinly, right? A few people are anointed with this magical dust of you're gonna get the rise, you're gonna get the attention. So find the people whose work you respect and boost them again and again, so that they can rise with you. That's my best advice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And also, just to tag along, just to piggyback very briefly, because I'm on a similar journey, is I think there's there are very few substitutes for having your own writing, like writing your own scripts, and even just if it's like samples that you can show to execs or producers. Look, I can write. Like I can do the thing. I can knock it out the park. Like keep me in the conversation when it comes to like adapting work and what have you. I don't know that there's any substitute for that as well. And that is something that you do have control, because in this work, there's so much that you don't have control over, but one of the few things that you do have control over is your own writing and your ability to do that. So I would just say, just keep writing.
Always keep writing.
Thank you.
I will say too, when I turned in the pilot for Ninth House, they were like, "This is not enough like the book." I was like, "What?" They're like, "It's too funny," and I was like, "The book is funny." Maybe no one else thinks it's funny, but I think it's hilarious. So yeah, had to rewrite. Yes.
For the beautiful turn of phrase, "no mourners, no funerals," I was wondering if there were prior iterations of that or any inspirations that went into that phrase, or if you like wrote it and was just like, "This is fucking brilliant."
Man, I wish that's how I felt when I was writing. I wish I was just like, yeah, I am a genius. No, I think what I did frequently when I'm looking for a particularly pithy turn of phrase, I will write the sentiment. Okay, I won't let myself slow down. I'll write the sentiment. Sometimes it arrives, right? Sometimes the line just arrives and you're lucky that way. But I will write the sentiment and then I will come back and let it sit in my subconscious for a while. With this one, I knew I wanted to relate to the idea that these are the people who there is nobody to, there's no money for the funeral, you're going to probably end up in a mass grave. There is no, they don't live in a culture in Ketterdam that can allow for mourning in the same way. Life has a different meaning. And so I knew the intent of the phrase, but I had to wait for it to get there. But I will be totally honest and say, I didn't know people were gonna lock in that way. Like you never do. Like sometimes I'll think I wrote something very clever and people are like, whatever, doesn't show up in those Goodreads quotes at all. I'm like, man, guess I'll have to make my own t-shirt. But you really don't know, and all you can do is sort of, again, write as honestly as you possibly can, and when you get that feeling of like, yes, it's good, and just go with that and hope people will follow you along.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. I'm a really big fan of all the books you make, and especially with the Six of Crows duology. It has felt like, for me personally, it has felt like such a safe place and like something that like I can really like relate to, and has helped me through a lot of stuff. And I just think it's incredible how you were able to take like this completely different universe with magic and in a completely different timeline with so many different things and still be able to relate to it and have people kind of like feel for it and feel with it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Look, there's no greater compliment than, books were my refuge. And I think you don't become a writer unless that's true, right? These are the places that we go to. And it's funny that these are dark books where bad things happen. But my comfort read growing up was Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, which is really bleak. It's really like Stephen King is terrible things happen, but those were my comfort books. So thank you for saying that. There's honestly no greater compliment you could give a writer. So glad they were there for you.
Thank you.
And you look amazing.
Thank you.
We have 5 questions remaining.
Yeah, I'm sorry we're not going to get to everybody, but if you have questions, you can ask me in the signing line if you like. But yes. Okay.
Hi, it's really, really nice to meet you. You were talking to someone who was like, put me in your acknowledgements section. I actually do have a book and have self-published it, and you are in my acknowledgements section.
That's awesome!
And I have a copy for you that I'll give you at some point.
Yes, please do. That's amazing.
So my question is part of the writing process, because I wrote that. I'm a first year in college, and I wrote that book as part of my senior research project in high school, and had it self-published simply just because it was part of my project, and it was really important to me that people at my school and in my community could read it. So how would you, for the writing process and the publishing process, sorry, it's kind of a two-part question. For the writing process, how do you turn like an aesthetic into like an actual plot? And then, because that is what I struggle with the most. And then for the publishing side, how do you like deal with the failure, and how do you just keep putting your name out there?
Oh, this is a tough one. In terms of aesthetic, I don't really write that way. I definitely start with, I actually think I start with plot, which is why when I gave Holly and Sarah Reese Brennan my Six of Crooked Kingdom to read, they were like, where is the romance? Like, they were like, where are the feelings? Like, that bandage scene in the hotel, that did not exist in the first draft. I know, I'm the worst. I'm like, they hold hands. Is that not enough for you, perverts? So, like, I tend to start with plot. Everybody is different. So you need to find the thing as a writer that whatever it is that gets you through the draft, that works. There's no right way to do this, right? So find the things that inspire you. Maybe it's a story button, like The Secret Badass. Maybe it is an aesthetic, like you love to build a Pinterest board and see what emotions and moods come to you. Maybe it's characters. Maybe there's a ship you really want to write. Like, it can be anything as long as it keeps you writing and allows you to maintain momentum. And as far as publishing and failure, look, this is the nature of the game, right? This is I think it's the best job in the world, right? Like,
I'm having a blast.
Yeah, like it is, if this is your dream job, then, the thing I would say is, our culture does not reward aspiring anything. Right? If you're an aspiring actor, they're like, oh, what have you been in? If you're an aspiring writer, they're like, oh, have you been published? And then once you're published, they're like, well, did you sell any books? Is it being adapted? Did it do well at the box office? Like, there's a scale that just keeps going because we don't recognize artistry. We recognize these arbitrary markers of success. Okay? So your job as artists and writers is to keep working when no one cares. When no one's watching, when people say no, your job is to keep writing. The only way they win is if you stop writing, okay? That's the war you're engaged in. So you go to battle every day and you make art. That's it. That's your job.
And all God's people said, amen.
Hello.
Hi. Oh, you have a lot of like mythical creatures in Shadow and Bone. Like you have Moritova's stag and the serpent. I'm a big fan of Language of Thorns as well. And I was wondering, like, how, it's kind of a two-part question, how, like, real to the universe are these, like, folk tales from Language of Thorns? And also, for the Sildrower, since, like, the other mythical creatures tend to be, like, I mean, those two are both, like, kind of created by Moritsova and like Grisha Power and Mursos. Do you think the Sildrower's like magic and just existence also is tied
Yes,
into
I
that?
do. I love this question. This is such a deep cut question. It's fantastic. So Language of Thorns is my collection of dark fairy tales that are basically set in the Grishaverse world. And there is, for me, the goal is always to blur the line between folklore, science, superstition, religion, and to see the way those intersect. So the Sildrower that she's talking about are actually mermaids. And there is one named Ula who's definitely like my Ursula villain origin story. And you may recognize a character who appears there and who is her brother or her half-brother. And so for me, that same character then shows up as a saint in Lives of Saints. So for me, there's, and I do that again also with Magda, Sancta Magda and the Witch of Duva. Like, I find it exciting to think about the way that people deal with the existence of magic. Do they turn it into a folk story? Do they accept it as a natural part of the world? Do they fear it the way, like, that story is fear of magic, right? That is a Fjerdan story where they're like, magic bad, magic terrible and dangerous. So, like, for me, that's the exciting part of it. So yes, I actually do, like, in my mind, the Sildrower absolutely do exist, but what form they exist in is probably up for debate.
Cool.
Yeah.
Also, just want to say, Justice for Juiced. Shouldn't have killed Juiced off. He was my favorite.
juice for juice. It sounds like we press beets, like we make juice, like juice Newton.
No, there's the shop where you can get your juice.
It's kosher Jewish
Yeah,
factories, like juice. Okay.
We have time for one last question.
Am I the last one? Oh my god.
Make it good.
No pressure.
I don't know where you lie on the plotter versus pantser spectrum, but I think I've heard you talk about writing very messy first drafts.
Yes.
And I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit on how messy they are. And like, do you at some point write every moment of the story in order, or are you all over the place?
Wow, yeah. So when I write an outline, what I really mean is I write 12 beats, okay? Some people use 15, but for me, they're like, when this happens, then this happens, until this happens. When this happens, then this happens until this happens. Like, there's 3 of them in the first act, there's 6 of them in the second act, there's 3 in the third act, but I kind of like hand wave the third act a little bit. I need to know where it ends, but I don't need to know all of the mechanics of that. I'll get to that. Future Leigh can worry about that. Future Leigh is in so much trouble. So I have like a whole book on one page, right? It's just a very short book. And then what I start doing is I start going in and I start building in scenes of what I know. And there are always gaps, right? There are always things where I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna get this thing from A to B, or I'm not quite sure where I'm gonna get this sort of emotional juice from, in this moment, but I'll start building it out that way. And so every time I'm making a pass through, I'm just filling in more of what I know, more of what I know, more of what I know. So in theory, that's all chronological, but I'm not moving chronologically through it because my big thing is momentum. If I lose momentum, forget it, there's no book. So I have to just keep piecing it together. And now actually what I do with all of my adult novels, I write to the midpoint, like to the big thing that's happening in the midpoint, and then I go back and revise that and then get into the second half. Like I don't zero draft it the way that I do my YA books. And my zero drafts are usually very short. The zero draft of Six of Crows was 30,000 words, and the final draft was about 130,000 words. But that's a whole book. It's a lot of things like, I don't know what happens here, or please figure this out, Leigh, you dummy. But like, the rest of it is like, but there is a beginning, middle, and end, and so I can see the shape of it. And that really helps me to understand what the story is about before I start digging in deeper.
Is that first half beta reader ready before you move on to the second half?
No. Well, you know.
On second thought.
Actually, I had to write Ninth House sort of in pieces because I was writing it in between other projects. The same thing happened with Hellbent. And so yes, I was sending the first half to my critique partners before I moved down. Now, I still had a rough sketch of everything that happened in the second half. So what I did, I was going to writing retreat. I sent it to a couple of my friends who I super trust, and they read it, and then I talked them through what the second half was gonna be, and we talked about all of the questions and problems I had that needed to get resolved, and they talked to me about like what might be missing from that first half. So, but again, everybody's process is different. So you finding the thing that allows you to keep creating work is all that matters, and there truly is no right way to do it, and there is also nothing that will spare you the pain. There's nothing, this is just a reality.
Fact.
If you have taste, and if you're a reader, then you have taste, nothing will spare you the pain of the thing not quite being the thing you have in your head, that only happens through revision, that only happens in process. And all I can offer is that we're right there struggling with you. We all go through it. You never get rid of it. Yeah, good luck.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
On that note, thank you all
Thank you.
for being in attendance, for coming, and thank you, Leigh.
Thank you, Tochi.
Oh, it was so wonderful to catch up.
So great.